His name was Richard. He was 71, a retired firefighter, broad shoulders, steady voice, and the kind of quiet strength that made you believe he'd seen it all. But when he sat down across from me that morning, his composure cracked. He looked me straight in the eye and said, "Doc, I feel like I've disappeared, not to the world, to myself." He wasn't talking about his heart, even though he'd had 2 bypass surgeries. He wasn't talking about memory, though he admitted some fog. What he meant was deeper, something many men feel but rarely say aloud. "I don't feel like a man anymore. I've lost my drive, my desire. It's like a light went out." Now here's the truth. Something most doctors won't say because, frankly, they've stopped asking. Losing sexual desire is not a natural part of aging. It's a signal, a whisper from the body that something's off balance. And far too many men, proud, quiet, dignified men, ignore that whisper until it becomes a silence. They don't complain. They surrender, but not because they're weak, because they think there's no other option. I'm Dr. James. I've spent more than 30 years focused on men's health, specifically for those over 60. And what I've discovered isn't just clinical, it's personal. Because vitality, intimacy, and energy aren't just hormone levels or lab numbers. They're lifelines, tied to how connected a man feels to his own body, to his partner, and to his purpose. Richard's story isn't rare. In fact, what he described matches patterns I've seen in over 1,000 cases. Clinical studies from institutions like the Cleveland Clinic confirm reduced circulation, chronic inflammation, poor sleep, and emotional detachment all contribute to a sharp decline in desire, even in otherwise healthy men. But here's the good news. It's reversible. Not through extreme measures, not through pills you dread taking, but by returning to 5 foundational natural shifts that most men have unknowingly neglected for decades. And once they're restored, desire doesn't just return. It reawakens something even deeper: identity, clarity, and connection. In this video, I'll walk you through those exact shifts, proven with science backed by real-life results. But first, I want to share what Richard did next, because it wasn't a prescription or procedure that changed him. It was a single, uncomfortable question that lit the path forward, and we'll begin right there. The first truth I share with every man who walks into my office is this: desire doesn't begin in the bedroom, it begins in the heart and the mind. When I first met Stephen, he wasn't just tired, he was emotionally worn thin. A former mechanical engineer in his early 70s, Stephen was the kind of man who could take apart a car engine blindfolded. But in that chair across from me, he looked adrift. "Doc," he said, "I haven't felt like myself in years. I'm not even sure what desire is supposed to feel like anymore." That kind of statement might shock some people, but to me, it's heartbreakingly familiar. Over the last 3 decades, I've heard versions of this same story from retired athletes, veterans, factory workers, and quiet family men who once radiated strength and purpose. They didn't suddenly grow weak. They simply began to believe the cultural myth that desire has an expiration date, that after 60, connection fades, intimacy dims. They begin to retreat, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, without even realizing it. But let me be clear, sexual desire doesn't die with age. It withers when emotional connection does, especially the one we have with ourselves. When I said this to Stephen, he blinked. He'd never thought about it that way. Like many men, he was raised to troubleshoot, his body like a machine. You fix what's broken. You replace the faulty part. If the drive is gone, you assume it's hormonal or mechanical. But what if it's emotional? What if desire is less about testosterone and more about identity? That's when I offered Stephen something unusual, not a prescription, a notebook. I told him, every morning, write down 3 things. Something you're grateful for, something you admire in your life, and something, anything, you're proud of about yourself. Say one of them out loud, every day. He gave me a puzzled look. "You think that's going to help with intimacy?" "No," I told him. "I think it's going to help you come back to yourself. And that's where intimacy begins. Over. The next few days, Stephen tried, clumsily at first, but then something shifted. He told his wife he loved the way she still danced in the kitchen when no one was watching. He thanked her for folding his shirts just the way he liked. Small words, gently spoken. At first, she just nodded, but by day 4, she lingered in the hallway, touched his hand, laughed a little louder, smiled a little longer. That's when Stephen realized something powerful. Intimacy isn't a switch you flip when the bedroom door closes. It's something you build slowly, quietly, in the everyday moments, in the way you speak, the way you notice, the way you show up without needing anything in return. Science backs this up. A study published in the Journal of Gerontology found that older adults who regularly practice gratitude and emotional expression experience significantly higher levels of relational satisfaction and even measurable hormonal improvements, including better sleep and cortisol balance, both of which support libido. So what does this mean for you? It means the first step isn't a pill, it's not a supplement. It's remembering how to feel again. To reconnect with your partner, with your daily life, and with the man you are now, not the man you used to be. Because here's the truth. When men start to believe their best years are behind them, they stop reaching out. They stop initiating. And eventually, they accept emptiness as the new normal. But it doesn't have to be that way. Stephen told me 1 month later that everything had shifted. He stood straighter. His eyes were brighter. He smiled without effort. One evening, his wife rested her head on his shoulder while they watched TV. No words, just warmth. And he told me, I thought it was all over. I thought I had to accept this decline, but I was just lost, not broken. Just lost. And that's what I want every man over 60 to understand. Your desire hasn't abandoned you. It's waiting. And when you return to yourself, when you reconnect with your emotional life, your presence, your sense of meaning, it returns too, like a wave that never really left the shore. Now let's move forward. Because while emotional disconnection may dim your spark, there's another quiet threat that's killing desire daily, and most men are unknowingly serving it on their plates. What Stephen discovered next at his local grocery store shocked him. And if your eating habits mirror most men in your age group, it may be extinguishing your vitality too. Let's talk about it. The second truth may surprise you. One of the biggest killers of male desire doesn't come from aging. It comes from your plate. When Harold returned a few weeks after reconnecting with his wife, I immediately noticed a difference. He moved, with more ease. His voice had more certainty. His energy felt lighter. But beneath the surface, he was frustrated. I feel closer to her, he said. We're laughing again, talking again. But, physically, something's still not clicking. That's when I asked a question most doctors never think to ask. What did you eat for breakfast this morning? Harold chuckled. Same as always. Toast, coffee, a slice of bacon, maybe a muffin if we have some. And lunch? Turkey sandwich, a few chips, diet soda. I nodded, then said something that caught him off guard. Harold, your meals might be quietly working against you. He blinked, confused. So I explained what I've seen for over 30 years in men just like him. Modern eating habits, especially in men over 60, are one of the most overlooked causes of declining sexual health and vitality. Not just energy and waistlines, but hormonal signaling, blood flow, and desire. You see, every bite of food either fuels your hormones or sabotages them. The processed breakfast meats, refined grains, seed oils, and chemical preservatives we've been sold as convenient are actively disrupting male hormones. They promote inflammation, throw insulin out of balance, and slowly dampen testosterone production, not with a bang, but with a slow erosion. Most men don't realize it's happening until they've accepted fatigue, apathy, and loss of drive as the new normal. I told Harold about another patient of mine, Lewis, age 74. He was struggling with the same issues: low libido, poor energy, and stalled progress from workouts. When we reviewed his diet, I wasn't surprised. Whole grain cereal, low-fat yogurt, margarine, diet soda. things marketed as healthy. In reality, they were stripping his endocrine system of support. So with Harold, we started making changes, not radical, just intentional. Instead of processed toast, he switched to pasture-raised eggs cooked in olive oil. He added half an avocado and a handful of berries. We cut out soda and replaced it with filtered water, and occasionally beet juice to support natural nitric oxide production. Lunch became grilled chicken and greens instead of deli meats and white bread. Bacon was replaced with wild-caught salmon a couple times a week. At first, he rolled his eyes. "Doc, this sounds like punishment." But within 2 weeks, everything changed. "I woke up before my alarm," he told me. "Didn't need 2 cups of coffee. I didn't feel foggy. And then, something else happened." He paused and smiled. Felt it again. That middle-of-the-day spark. That pull. Like my body wanted something again. That's not magic. That's chemistry. When your system is no longer inflamed, clogged with sugar, or numbed by artificial ingredients, it wakes up. You feel it in your muscles, your mood, even in your skin. You become alert, present, and yes, more connected to your desire. And what's more exciting? It doesn't take years to feel the shift. In many cases, it takes just a few days of mindful eating to reawaken the fire. I've watched men go from flat to vibrant in under a week, just by removing the silent saboteurs from their meals. Harold called it his fuel plan, and he took pride in it. Every trip to the grocery store became an act of self-respect. Every clean bite told his body, "I'm still in this game." Few people will tell you this. After 60, every bite matters more. Your body becomes more sensitive to toxins, but also to nutrients. And real food becomes a form of power, a way to reclaim your presence, strength, and emotional connection. Harold wasn't an exception. I've seen this story unfold hundreds of times, men just like you. Tough, committed, proud, but unaware that their kitchen habits were quietly draining the very life they were trying to get back. Once the fuel changed, so did the fire. These men didn't just regain energy. They started showing up with quiet strength. Their touch returned. Their gaze met their partners with purpose. And something unexpected unlocked. Because when the body is aligned and the mind is clear, it takes just 2 minutes a day. And it's so simple that most men laugh when I tell them. But after they try it, they stop laughing. Let me show you what it is. The third secret? A simple 2-minute ritual that reawakens desire. Starting with your body, not your calendar. Over the years, I've lost count of how many men have said to me, "Doc, I don't feel like myself anymore." When I ask what, they mean it's rarely just about intimacy, it's about slowness, fog, a sense of emotional and physical disconnection, as if the flame inside them quietly faded. That's how Harold described it too. By this point in his journey, things were already improving. He was emotionally more engaged with his wife. His diet had shifted. His mornings were clearer, and he had more natural energy throughout the day. But still, something hadn't reignited completely. "I'm here," he told me, "but I'm still waiting for that spark, that feeling when your body is ready. Not just your thoughts, but your muscles, your breath, your rhythm. It's like readiness used to live in my blood." He was absolutely right. Because desire doesn't just live in your heart or your head. It lives in your pulse, in your circulation, in the oxygen moving through your lungs, your brain, and, yes, your lower body. And most of all, it lives in movement. The problem is, most older men have been conditioned to think that unless they're spending 60 minutes in a gym, it's not real exercise. And when that feels out of reach, they do nothing. But here's what they don't realize. The body doesn't crave duration. It craves signal, a reminder that it's still alive, still powerful, still useful. That's when I introduced Harold to what I call the 2-minute hormone wake-up. A small morning ritual I've taught dozens of patients, and one I do myself every day. It's fast, it's simple, but most importantly, it's a signal. A clear message to your system. I'm still in this game. Harold was skeptical. 2. Minutes, that's it? That's it, I smiled. But you've got to do it daily. We began with something deceptively basic. 10 deep belly breaths. Inhale through the nose, slow and steady. Let the belly rise. Exhale through the mouth. Most people forget how to breathe deeply, especially when they're stressed or aging. But deep breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, calms the brain, lowers cortisol, and resets the hormonal environment that supports both libido and sleep. Next, 20 slow, bodyweight squats. No gym, no equipment, just shoulder-width stance, straight spine, steady tempo. Each squat pumps fresh blood into the lower body, directly where increased circulation matters most for male vitality. Then we finish with 1 minute of shadowboxing. No gloves, no punching bags, just light, playful punches in the air. Chest open, shoulders loose, hips moving. It's not about power, it's about awakening. Testosterone starts flowing. The heart rate rises, and the mind reconnects with the body. Harold laughed at first. I haven't thrown a punch since the 70s. But within 2 days, everything changed. His voice had more energy. He walked, taller. He did the ritual before brushing his teeth and said the clarity afterward stayed with him all day. And here's what mattered most. His wife noticed. You look more alive, she said. That's something he hadn't heard in years. See, this ritual doesn't just build physical strength. It sharpens presence. It restores confidence. It's a nonverbal reminder to yourself and to those around you that you're not fading away. You're choosing to re-engage. Science confirms it too. Gentle, consistent morning movement boosts nitric oxide, a key for vascular dilation, supports healthy testosterone levels, and enhances neuromuscular communication, all critical for desire and energy. But perhaps even more powerful, it rebuilds the relationship between you and your body, something many men quietly lose with age. And when that connection returns, it spills into everything. I've had patients tell me they started walking with intention again, feeling balance in their stride. One man told me, "Doc, I don't know what's changed, but my wife keeps giving me that look again." That's not coincidence. That's chemistry. That's presence. That's what happens when you give your body a daily reminder that it was built to move, to feel, and to want. Harold never missed a day after that first week. It's not about the movement, he told me. It's about the rhythm, the ritual. It's something I own again, and that's the power of this practice. It's not complicated, but it's transformative. Because when a man begins each morning with confidence and purpose, everything else begins to align. But even with all that fire, there's one more factor that can quietly extinguish it. If left unspoken. It's not physical, it's not hormonal, it's something deeper, something that affects millions of older men, and yet almost no one talks about it. Now let's talk about that. Now let's move forward. We've just explored how daily movement can reawaken a man's connection with his body. But what if that flame still flickers low, even with the best physical routine in place? What if the body feels ready, but the soul still hesitates? Here's the fourth truth, one that's often hidden in plain sight. Loneliness isn't just a feeling. It's a biological disruptor, a slow, invisible force that dims vitality, distorts desire, and leaves even the healthiest hearts feeling hollow. I didn't learn this from textbooks or hormone charts. I learned it from sitting across men like Richard, strong on paper, full lab panels, good mobility, yet visibly deflated in spirit. One day he told me, with mist in his eyes, "Sometimes I forget what my own voice sounds like." That sentence has never left me, and science now confirms what Richard revealed in that moment. Chronic loneliness triggers a biochemical storm inside the body. Studies from Harvard and UCSF show that prolonged social isolation leads to increased cortisol levels, the stress hormone known for suppressing testosterone, impairing sleep, and dulling emotional receptivity. In older men, this hormonal cascade can sabotage even the strongest physical foundations. It's not simply about wanting companionship. It's about needing connection for survival. Intimacy isn't purely physical. It's about being seen, being valued, feeling useful. And when those emotional nutrients are missing, the body responds with fatigue, loss of motivation, and yes, fading desire. Even Harold, whose morning ritual had reignited much of his energy, found himself drifting back into a fog when his wife traveled for a few days. The silence was louder than I expected, he told me. That void wasn't about missing her presence alone. It was about the collapse of shared meaning, conversation, laughter, rhythm. What most men don't realize is this. The opposite of desire isn't disinterest, it's disconnection. You can't treat low libido with supplements alone when the real deficiency is emotional belonging. So we took a different route. I asked Harold to reconnect with just 2 people, not a crowd, not a dozen new friends. Just one old Navy buddy and a local community garden his wife once mentioned. He hesitated at first, joking, "What does pulling weeds have to do with feeling like a man again?" 3 weeks later, he had his answer. "Doc," he said, "I forgot what it felt like to laugh with someone. That laughter, that shared moment rewired something inside him. His posture changed, his tone became more vibrant. His conversations with his wife became deeper, and most importantly, his desire returned. Not because he took something, but because something inside him was released. This isn't anecdotal, it's physiological. Social connection has been shown to improve cardiovascular health, regulate hormone balance, and stimulate areas of the brain responsible for reward and motivation. The simple act of belonging recalibrates the body's chemistry, clearing the fog and allowing intimacy to flow again. Unfortunately, our culture has trained men to ignore this pain, to tough it out, to bury emotional needs under pride or silence. But what we call resilience often becomes emotional neglect, and eventually the body can no longer compensate. That's why my advice is simple but urgent. Reconnect, intentionally. Call one old friend. Join a local hobby group, photography, model trains, gardening, anything. Volunteer once a week. You don't have to be the center of attention. You just have to show up. Because showing up isn't weakness. It's medicine. Connection doesn't just soften life. It revives it. It reactivates the circuits of desire, motivation, and presence. I've watched countless men come back to life, not because of therapy or medication, but because they stopped isolating themselves. And when you reconnect, with others, with meaning, with joy, your body listens. So as we move toward the final piece of this journey, I ask you to reflect. Have you been running from the very thing that could heal you? Because the last secret is not about trying harder. It's about embracing what we've all been taught to avoid. And once you do that, something unexpected begins to unfold. Let me show you what that is. Now let's move forward. We've spoken about reconnection with your breath, your body, and your relationships. But what if we've been looking at aging itself the wrong way? What if the issue isn't our biology, but our beliefs? That brings us to the 5th secret, reframing aging not as decline, but as a gateway to deeper, more powerful intimacy. I'll never forget a conversation I had with Harold several months into his transformation. He had already restructured his life, eating with intention, breathing with presence, moving daily, volunteering, and building a richer emotional connection with his wife. His progress was remarkable. But on that particular day, something about his tone shifted. He looked at me and asked, "Why didn't I do all this when I was younger?" It wasn't just a question. It was a quiet grief, one I've heard echoed by many men. Our culture conditions us to equate vitality with youth. Somewhere along the line, we absorb the message that intimacy, sexual power, and passion are things that fade with gray hair and softer edges. But here's the truth I've seen again and again, both in clinical research and in the lives of men I work with. Aging doesn't take your power. It distills it. Yes, testosterone levels may dip. Yes, the body moves a little slower. But in exchange, you gain the very qualities that can make intimacy deeper and more rewarding. Patience, presence, emotional fluency, and the courage to be vulnerable without shame. In fact, emerging studies from the Mayo Clinic and the University of Chicago suggest that men over 60 who maintain emotional connection and gentle physical activity report higher satisfaction with their intimacy, not despite age, but because of it. The pressure to perform lifts, and what replaces it is presence. That's exactly what happened with Harold. When he stopped chasing the standards of his 40-year-old self, when he stopped comparing his now to his then, he uncovered something extraordinary. Intimacy became less about achievement and more about shared energy, the warmth of a lingering hand, the safety of silence, the electricity of simply being there. He no longer strived to prove his masculinity. He embodied it, with calm, with clarity, with a kind of rooted confidence only time can give. One night, his wife looked at him and said, "I don't need you to be younger. I just need you to be here." That moment didn't just move him, it liberated him. Because true sexual vitality isn't a sprint. It's an arrival. It's about showing up in your full self, scars and all, without apology. And in that space of emotional and physical honesty, a different kind of desire emerges, one that doesn't burn fast and disappear, one that glows warm and steady, anchored in trust, love, and mutual recognition. The real shift happened when Harold stopped resisting his age and started leaning into its wisdom. And when he did, everything softened. The stress, the comparisons, the shame, they all fell away. What remained was simple, grounded, undeniable presence. So if you've been seeing aging as your enemy, let me offer you a different lens. Aging is not what closes the door on intimacy. It's what opens the door to its most authentic form. It's not about going back to who you were. It's about becoming fully who you are now. And now that you've heard all 5 secrets, the same principles that transformed Harold's life and the lives of countless men I've worked with, you might be asking, what comes next? How do you take these lessons and turn them into something real, something sustainable? That's exactly what we'll explore in the final chapter. Because true change isn't about knowing, it's about choosing. And in the conclusion, I'll guide you through the most important step of all, the first one, the one that makes all the others possible. Let's bring it all together. If you've followed this far, you've already felt it, that quiet, growing realization that aging isn't the end of desire. It's the beginning of rediscovering it with more clarity, depth, and freedom than ever before. We've uncovered 5 powerful truths. We've seen how desire starts not in the body but in the mind, through the thoughts we choose, the narratives we accept, and the way we speak to ourselves. We've seen how food can either fuel or drain the very hormones that support your vitality. We've discovered that even 2 minutes of purposeful movement each morning can shift your biology and reawaken your confidence. We've talked about the silent damage of loneliness and the healing that connection brings. And finally, we've reframed aging not as decline, but as a deeper evolution of intimacy itself. But here's the real truth. None of this matters unless you choose to act. This isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's about showing up for your body, your relationships, and the life that still waits to be fully lived. Maybe for you, it starts with one walk, one honest conversation, one better meal, one breath of intention. That one small step could change everything. So if this message resonates with you, or if it reminds you of someone you love, don't keep it to yourself. Share your thoughts in the comments, tell your story. You never know who it might help. And if you haven't already, I gently invite you to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell. Not just for us, but for you. To remind yourself that this journey isn't over. It's just beginning. Because you are not done. You are just getting started.